So I'm going to create, what I'm going to do in this video is I'm going to show you how to create a table. A table is the backbone of an Access database. You have to have tables before you do anything else. So getting back to our first video where I was shopping around on Amazon, I said that there's this huge table that has all of their inventory in it, and then I can search around their database. And what I'm really doing is searching their table, and it's showing me the items that are in their database. So we're going to create a table, and what we're going to do is we're going to create a table based off of students. Just like if I was going to create a table based off of information that I may want to pull from students. So I used Excel just for the purpose of showing you what I want to create. I want to create a table that has this information about students. So I'm interested in their student ID, their first name, their middle initial, their last name, their street address, spelled wrong, city, state, postal, which is their zip code, their gender, and their major. So that's all I'm interested in. It's just I want to create a table that has these 5 things in it, or these, I don't know, maybe 7, 10 things in it. So I'm going to create this table using Access. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to open up Access. I'll slide this out of the way. I'll use it again in a second. So I'm going to open up Access. Alright, so this is and yours may look a little different. For some reason mine's showing up a little strange. So I want to create a blank database. That's the first thing that I'm going to create. So I'm going to click on blank database, and it opens up this window. Now, this is where things get a little different with Access as opposed to the other applications that we've been dealing with. When I open up Word, I can start typing in Word and just type until I feel like I'm ready to save it, and then I save it, I give it a name, and say where I want it to save. Access is different. Access, you have to actually create the place for the database to go before you start entering data in. And the reason for this is because Access needs to change records automatically. And so it needs to have a place where these records are stored so it can change them. So that's why we create the place first. So I'm going to call this my first database. And I'm going to save it to my desktop. And hit save. And then I'm going to hit create. And then I have an icon, here it is on my desktop for my first database. So when Access opens up, the first thing it does is it takes you to your table. Now, we haven't created a table yet, but Access is telling us this is the first thing you've got to do. You've got to create a table. So we're going to create a table. Now, the book shows you a couple different ways to create tables. I'm going to show you the way that I think is best. I think it's just going to cause you the least amount of confusion. For tables and queries, we're going to use Design. For forms and reports, we're going to use a wizard. It's just, I think these are the easiest way for us to get through this. Again, Access is a huge application. I could teach this entire semester on Access, but we're just going to barely scratch the surface of it. So I want to make this as easy as I possibly can for you guys. So I need to get into Design View for this table. Now up here, you'll see that there's this little icon. It's a ruler, a triangle, and a pencil. This will take me into Design View. Now this is a brand new table, so I'm going to have to do some things to start off. So I'm going to go into Design View. And the first thing I need to do is give this table a name, because we haven't named it. So we're just going to call this the Students Table. And say OK. And now I'm in Design View for this table. Now the first thing it gives me is this ID and auto number. Access really wants every table to have something that's called a primary key. A primary key is something that makes every record unique from every other record. Even if everything else about the record is the exact same, at least a primary key is going to be different. Think of it this way. We're creating this students table. Let's suppose that I had 2 students. a father and a son. Both have the same name. One's a junior, one's a senior. The student lives with his parents. So everything about the father and the son's information is going to be the same. The name's going to be the same, the address is going to be the same, gender is going to be the same, everything's going to be the same. But I need some way to differentiate the father from the son, saying these are the father's records, these are the son's records. So we need some sort of primary key, some sort of identifier that separates the two. So here you have something called a student ID. At work, you would have an employee ID. At a bank, you would have an account number. On your driver's license, you have a driver's license number. These are primary keys that separate you from someone else. So Access has, if you have something that you can use, so if you're importing some data in from someplace else, you can use that field. You can use the student ID field. You can use the student IDs if you already have them. If you don't have something that you can use as a primary key, Access will create one for you with this auto number. And what it's going to do is it's going to give my first record the ID of 1. And it's going to give my second record the ID of 2. So we're just going to call this student ID. And we're going to leave it as auto number. So now I'm going to use this spreadsheet. Let's scoot this stuff over so everybody can see everything. So now I'm going to use this spreadsheet to enter the information that I need to create these fields. So I'm going to create fname, and it's short text. And then we have middle initial. Now middle initial, I only want it to be 1 character. So down here at the bottom, I should have done this, I'm sorry. I noticed how I had fname, I want it to be 15 characters. So I'm going to go up here and I'm going to change this to from 255. I don't want people to type in a book for a paragraph for their first name. I just want I just want to limit that to 15 characters. My middle initial, I'm going to limit that to just 1 because I don't want their whole middle name. I just want their middle initial. Last name, or L name. Short text. Now this description is optional. It's just a good idea to do it, but it is optional. I don't have to do that for everyone. So I don't want to limit that to 15 also. And this is SADD. That's going to be the street address. And I said I'm going to limit that to 20. City. Short text city. I'm going to limit that to 15. State. Short text state. I'm going to limit that to 2 because I want people to just do the abbreviation. Postal. Short text state. Or postal. We'll just say zip code. Now, postal is going to be kind of weird because our zip codes are numbers. And I could have selected a number for this, but you really only use numbers if you're going to do math on it. You would not do numbers for a phone number, a social security number, an ID, or something kind of like that. And you wouldn't do math on a zip code. So we're just going to leave that as text. Gender. Short text. Gender. And we're going to say 1 because we want people to say whether they're male or female. And major. Short text, major. And we said that we're going to limit that to 15. So there's our fields that we need for this table. Now, I've done the background work to create these fields. So now I want to see what it's going to look like when I get into my table. So I'm going to go from design view. Notice this icon has changed from the ruler, the triangle, and the pencil. Now it's got this like spreadsheet looking thing. So this is going to take me straight into datasheet view. So I click on that, and the first thing it's going to ask me to do is save it. Now the reason it's asking me to save it is because, remember when I went from datasheet view to design view the first time, and it asked me to save it, and I had to give it the name of students for the students table. Now it's asking me to save it again because I changed the structure of the table. I've created new fields. So I've changed the way that this table is built. So I'm going to say yes, and it takes me into datasheet view, and so this is what my field or my table now looks like. And I'll enter some information. Now I'm not interested in student ID because I said that's going to be automatically generated. So the first thing I have to enter in is my first name. And notice that it automatically inputted my student ID. Oops. Try to enter too many characters. If I try to type male, it won't let me because I limited it to one character. So there's my first field, or my first record. So my first record number 1 is me. Now, here's something that's a little bit interesting. Watch what I do. I'm going to shut down Access. Boom. Just shut it down. It didn't ask me to save or anything, did it? Even though I created that, even though I put that record in. I'm going to open it back up. Enable my content, students, and there's that record still there. Access is only going to tell you need to save it if you change the structure of one of your objects, of your forms, tables, queries, or reports. Then it's going to ask you to save it. If you don't, if the only thing you're changing is a record, so like if I decided that I was no longer a psychology major, but I was an IT major, so I've changed the structure. I didn't change the structure of the table. I just changed a record. I just changed like my major in a record. Again, I'm going to hit X. It's going to shut it down, but if I open it back up, it automatically saves. It will open back up. Come on. There we go. It's going to automatically save the changes to records. But if I change the structure of one of my objects, then it is going to ask me to save. Okay, so I've changed this table. I've created my first record. Now what I want to do is use this table to create a form. Okay, again, you guys are the designers of this database. You are not the end user. You've got other people that's going to be out there that's going to enter in like all of these students, and maybe there's thousands and thousands of students and that they need to enter in. You're not going to do that. You get paid too much money. You are the designer of the database. They don't pay you to do this other stuff. So what I want to do is I want to create a form for an end user to use. And they can just sit there and just enter information in, blah, blah, blah. And they don't necessarily see the table. Only thing I want them to see is the form that they're going to use to enter the information in. So I said before, for the purposes of this class, for creating tables and queries, we're going to go into design. And for forms and reports, we're going to use a wizard. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use a wizard to create a form for this table. So I'm going to click on Create. Here's my form group, and there's a button here that says Form Wizard. Now you can create a form based off of any table or any query that you have. I only have one table, and so it's my students table, so that's what I'm going to use to create my form. Now here's all of the fields that are in that table. I want to have all of these fields in my form with the exception of one, the student ID. Now the reason I don't want student ID is because I said student ID is going to be automatically generated. And generally when people look at a form and they see a box on the form, they think that they need to put something in it. So I don't want them to put anything in the student ID form. They couldn't anyway, but I don't want them to do it. I don't want them to get confused about it, so I just don't even want to include that in the form that I'm creating. So I want to have all of these other fields in the form, but not student ID. So these are my available fields. I'm going to select. Now I can select I go through here and select these one at a time, or I can hit that double-headed arrow like I just did. Let me show you. I can select this one at a time and bring them over, or I can shoot this double-headed arrow and shoot all of them over. And then I want to get rid of student ID, so I click on that and shoot it back because I don't want that included. So now my form is going to have all of these fields except for student ID. So I'm going to hit next. For the purposes of this class, all of our forms are going to be columnar. Don't worry about any other ones. We're just going to make everything columnar. Hit next. And we're going to call this the student's form. Hit finish. And it will open up my brand new form. So here's my new form. Postal code is way too big. Don't know why. I could change that later if I wanted to, but we're not going to worry about that right now. Okay, so down here at the bottom, you'll see that I've got these records, one of one. I only got one record in it, so that makes sense. So what I want to do is I want to create and you see these VCR buttons, kind of what I call them. There's this one will take you to the first record. It's the arrow pointing to the bar. Just the arrow will take you back one record. The arrow pointing to the right will take you to the next record. The arrow pointing to the right in a bar will take you to the last record. And then there's this little arrow that's pointing to a little orange star or something like that. I can't really see it. It's kind of small. It will take you to a brand new blank record. Now, I want to enter a new record. But if I type over this, I'm not entering a new record. I am changing an existing record. So, if I want to type a new record and I type over this, Chris Brewer is going to be gone and it's going to be replaced with whatever I typed over. I need a new record. So I'm going to click this little button that points to the star that takes me to a new blank record. And now I can enter in the information for this one. So now we've got this brand new record, and generally, like when I get into one of these things, I generally like to go backwards a little bit, just kind of let Access know that I'm through creating this record. So I've created. Now you see that I have two records. Before it's just one. Now if I go back into my students' fields, in my student form, or student table, you'll see that there's only one record, but I haven't updated it yet. So if I hit F5. This updates the table. So I hit F5 and you'll see there's this new record that shows in there. And again, I hit X, shuts it down, bring it back. There's my form. It's still there because I saved that, and then my record is still the same. So that's how we create forms and tables in Access. Come back later on and we'll talk about queries and reports. Yay.